2. I suppose it all started with a goal. The fear I felt was one that I had never felt before. Nothing within could prepare me for such a return. I was flowing with questions. How long has it even been? How many birthdays, anniversaries, first or 12 steps had I missed? Where had all my friends gone? Because surely there were friends. They were my brothers and sisters, my sanity. Could they accept my return? Or would they dismiss me as I had dismissed our friendships for these lost years? Flying high above the Atlantic, my anxiety began to boil to the surface. The elderly woman next to me took my hand to hers as I disguised my discomfort as a fear of flying.
Now don't you worry, dear. We'll be home before you know it.
Unfortunately, the ignorance in her loving words enhanced my anxiety. Home, as she put it, was my fear, but there was no turning back by this point. My struggles continued at customs, where I was forced to endure the questioning of some fascist customs agent, detaining me against my will, unable to comprehend how I could have just left all my belongings behind. I was released with a stern warning, as if I was to be thankful for the great favor they were allowing me. I took a cab down Yonge Street, traveling deep into the heart of the city, wanting to walk the strip as I'd once done as a youth, filled with ambition, unlocked with the memories of that magical first time when immersed in the lights, buildings, and people of the beastly metropolis. The strip hadn't changed. Sure, there were different stores, flashier advertisements, but Toronto's ideals were the same. Money still held her grip. That same unforgettable lust could be felt on every corner and within every step I took. The night gripped her, but she wouldn't sleep. It was quite the exchange. The soothing sounds of the ocean for the screeching of tires and cries of sirens. I woke to a sense of nothingness. There was nothing to get out of bed for, so I didn't. Hours passed drifting in and out of sleep as my dreams seemed fused together, confusing reality. Thoughts of the past flowed like wine, but they lacked emotion, only images, trapping me within a slideshow of what was my life. The unplugged clock remained silent. There was no hum, no flashing lights. I was at peace.
Hello? Steve?
Yes?
Fuck me! God has resurrected another son. It's really you! I was sure I'd never hear from you again.
Shit! Jeremy?
The technology scared me. How quickly it began. The thunder, the jubilation, the excitement, all tied into each startling knock. The door would have given in if I hadn't gotten to it. There in front of me stood a man holding a bottle of fine Canadian rye in one hand, and what I could only guess to be a pipe in the other. It was a reunion of brothers, and with it, a return to the old routine. There was little conversation at first. We were both trapped in thought, revisited by a time dismissed long ago as the past, left staring at each other in a timeless moment where our souls were once again connected, and I was left to try and rediscover what had happened to that boy of a lifetime ago. I suppose it all started with a goal.
Here's another shot, right by the score! Anderson! And scores for Canada! Anderson right in front of the net!
1972. To be honest, it started long before then, but I suppose my beginning happened that night. The night where we, as Canadians, were united in our victory, and everything considered holy was secured. We had defeated the evil commie bastards, and for one night all Canadians united, reassured of our dominance over the sport we loved. Thunder Bay was no exception. The The small northern city was shut down. The local sports watering hole was filled past capacity, as even the haters of sport were in attendance to support their country. It wasn't about hockey, but national identity. Mother saw little use for patriotism, and even less for hockey. However, she too was in attendance that night, led to that infamous bar by the federal government, and 4 years of student loans, acting as the pusher, serving the drunkards their fuel as they lapped it up while cursing out the hypnotic box.
Why is it that we only deem things fate when we wish them to happen?
It was tragedy in my father's former life as a NHL player that brought him to that bar. He had lost everything: the celebrity, the respect, the envy of others, all gone for the Great White North and the question of what in God's name he was doing in Thunder Bay. But I suppose there was more to it than just that. For if it had not been for little Mikey McDonald, he wouldn't have been there at all. Without little Mikey, my father would never have even known where Thunder Bay was. But how the actual encounter went, I would never know for certain. Mother never spoke of that night. I assume it was partially due to the excitement of the atmosphere, mixed with the thrill of victory, all wrapped in the deluge of cigarette smoke and alcohol. What else? My father called it fate. I don't know much else of my early years. My pestering would never loosen Mother's tongue, and Father wasn't there to be asked. My only clear memory was of that infamous day in March, and the accident that shook the people of Thunder Bay to the core. It was a drunk driver, that much was certain. Some lost soul who had just found out his wife had left him. A man like so many others, broken and disheartened, who had loved and lost, only to prove that his pickup was no match to the little tempo which happened to cross its path. The name McDonald was familiar to me at the time. There was a little girl in my class who had the same last name, but I was too young to put a face to the tragedy. Having never seen little Mikey play hockey, who at the age of 18 was known only as Mike or a variety of other proclaimed nicknames, I was at loss to the effect that his death would have on the people of Thunder Bay. His father, Jim, had been a local coach and small business owner and had attended every one of his games since coaching him back in Adam. It was Jim who had been driving that infamous night. The girl in my class was his youngest sister, Samantha or Sam, but she wasn't in class that day. It seemed that no one was left unaffected. Even Mother was noticeably distraught, despite her hatred of hockey. Michael McDonald was another speck of hope, erased, a success story turned tragedy. I can still remember the drive to the funeral. I wasn't sure why I was going, but Mother and I rode in the back while Grandpa drove with Grandma at his side, windows up. I wanted to taste the air, but didn't dare disrupt the atmosphere of that solemn ride of silence. Slowly the procession left the church and the convoy headed out of town, with hundreds of cars, one after another, following one of their own, all following a piece of themselves. We entered the John Street Cemetery, and having never been in such a place before, my eyes raced from side to side, trying to fulfill my curiosity. The convoy stopped, but nothing was said. Everyone else seemed to know what was to happen next. One by one, car doors began to open, and the masses began to accumulate in different clans, before coming together as one at the foot of the two holes to the right of a covered mountain of dirt. I looked around and saw many familiar faces. There was the butcher conversing with my gym teacher, A laugh and a faint smile on their faces quickly removed upon remembering where they were. There was Tommy and some other kids from school, but they too seemed to feel the longevity of the situation and remained silent and motionless. It wasn't until the priest began to speak that I noticed her standing at the front in a new black dress, motionless, in a word, broken. It was the first time that I had seen Sam since the accident, and there was no justice in attempting to describe the way she looked. The effect of her sorrow touched me more than I would ever know. The certainty of death and the awakened realization that her life was going to be forever changed hit me. My chest suddenly collapsed under a weight of grief. I looked up at my family, who were held tight together behind me in a protective shield, silent as one, striking the sullen realization that Sam now stood alone. I finally understood. The reception was quick. There was little speech, the singing of Amazing Grace, and the tossing of dirt. We were united as a community in song, prayer, tears, grief, and hope, as we hoped to never have to endure such tragedy again. The lowering of the caskets proved too much for Marion, Sam's mother. Her legs buckled, dropping her to her knees, sobbing with questions, pleading aloud in a shrill, menacing scream for her husband and her only son. It was her sister that came to her aid, removing her from the sight of the graves. And with that, the crowd began to disperse. But I was paralyzed by my newfound emotions and remained behind while the others slowly returned to their cars to reform the convoy. Mother had left and was conversing with a man that I hadn't seen before, while Grandpa was consoling my grandmother. Unnoticed, I was left staring at the two marble headstones, which both simply read, "Taken before their time," a phrase that would forever haunt me. Lost in a stare, I didn't notice Sam, who had also stayed behind, until her gentle mouse-like voice startled me.
Mommy said they went to a place where all their dreams come true.
I was left speechless. Sam then reached over and took my hand to hers and held it with a gentle squeeze. The sudden realization of tears flowing down my cheeks held my head in place, as I remained too self-conscious to look over at her. Rather, we remained fixated on the tombstones in front of us, left only with the somber facts. Taken before their time.